Так, все, стоп. Well, here we go again.
Oh shit, here we go again.
And I'm already ready to tell about my 2024. So, I wrote a big text for 6 pages. And let's start. Good afternoon. Нет, это только в моей голове было смешно. Now you will see that I can speak English for longer than 10 seconds. And yes, guys, I'm going to tell you something that I can't tell you in Russian, because it's very personal. And in Russia, only a very small number of people know English, so those who don't need to listen to it won't understand what I was talking about. Well, guys, the year 2024 has passed. Was it difficult? Well, no. In general, there were more pluses than minuses, but first things first. January started in December. My grandmother was very ill and she refused to be treated. She was preparing to die at 74 because her mother died at that age and she seriously believed that it was impossible to outlive her own mother. Of course, this is senile marasm, but I was wildly upset that she wanted to die and refused to take the pills that the doctor prescribed for her. I'm so embarrassed for my pronunciation, but I do all my best. She rejected everything. And I was so worried about her that I even had to go to a psychologist because I just couldn't accept that such a significant person in my life would die in the near future. And just so you know, I have never had a deal with the death of loved ones. None of my grandparents died, and I just don't know what it would be like to face such a loss. And with the psychologist, we found out that whatever it was, over time I would be able to cope with this loss, and after the consultation I really calmed down. My mom and I continued to visit her, giving her a food massage because her legs were very swollen after prednisone injections and she couldn't stand on them. It was just a nightmare. I also remember one day when she called me before I was supposed to go to her place, and she telling me that she had fallen and couldn't get up for several hours until Grandpa came home and picked her up. And I was so scared that she might have broken something. How dangerous it was to fall at her age, and how bad it was if she didn't have the strength to get up. In short, I was very nervous about it. But don't worry, because a year has passed since this moment and my grandmother is still alive, and soon I'm going to her 75th birthday. So she got better because she agreed to take at least some of the prescribed medications for anemia. Also, in past, I also had anemia, by the way. And I began to let go mentally. I was mentally relieved. At the end of the month, I decided to continue studying a new profession. I also received an offer from my Vogue teacher to perform with him at his birthday party. He came up with a choreography for 5 people, and I had my own solo part. which I couldn't help but be proud of, since he chose me out of all the girls. I've been dreaming about this for so long, God. And in February, 2 troubles happened. First of all, I had a fight with my mom before my birthday, and I was so angry that I said I wouldn't come, even though the cafe was already booked. Now, to be honest, I don't even remember what we were fighting about, but then we made up and I came. Wouldn't it be weird if my family celebrated my birthday without me? I think very yes. And a new trouble was waiting for me in a dance class. I began to notice that something inside my knee was strangely pulling when I squatted down. Moreover, when the knee develops, it stops hurting, but after a long period of absence of movement, it feels like it is a very tight on flexion. I didn't pay much attention to it, and over time it started to click while bending, but without pain. I didn't pay much attention to that either, although I was a little worried. And everything went on like this until I was training at home, doing a regular catwalk, hi to walkers, and shifting my weight to my right leg. I felt such a sharp pain that shot through my knee like a lightning. I could barely stand on my feet at that moment. I thought I wouldn't be able to step on that foot anymore. It was really very painful and very scary. I sat down, then tried to bend and straighten my leg a little, and since it was already night, I had no choice but to go to bed and hope that eventually it would heal on its own. As usual. I was so wrong, God. I was so wrong. The next 3 days at work were just torture. My knee hurt when I lifted my leg off the ground, when I bent it, when I tried to straighten my leg as much as possible. It seemed to have lost its former amplitude compared to my left leg, and it also hurt a lot at the extreme point. Squatting was all the more difficult, but I believed that it just needed to be done. And I squatted down through the pain and stood up with a ringing click. Of course, after a few days the pain eased, but it didn't disappear completely. And in early March, I was already joyfully performing at a birthday party and hoped that I would be able to restore my knee to its former state on my own. And collagen was supposed to help me with this. I started drinking it, and after a while the pain began to ease. It stopped being constant and intensified only after exerting pressure on my knee if I did catwalk or duck walk. I also drank boswellia, chondroitin, MSM, curcumin, and they helped me, especially boswellia. But when it was over, the constant pain returned and I was morally destroyed again by the fact that the knee had not been going away on its own for a month. And collagen wasn't particularly help. And I spent almost the whole of April in agony because I didn't want to go to the doctor, even though part of my new even though part of me knew I had to do it because it was obvious that nothing would heal on its own. And I didn't want to go to the doctor because I was afraid to hear the diagnosis, afraid that she or he would say that everything was bad for me, or that they would condemn me for taking so long, and that it was too late and nothing could be done. My biggest fear. In short, I was winding myself up to the fullest. And I remember one day when I woke up, my knee hurt very much. I went to the shower and there I was overcome with such despair and fear for a possible future knee replacement operation, or that this pain would always be there, that I wouldn't be able to walk because the disease progressed. I was so overwhelmed by those fears and this knee pain, which exhausted me every day, which I always felt when I walked, got up and sat down, that I just burst into tears under the stream of water like in sad movies. It was such a cinematic moment that I was so sad at that moment that it was all my fault. That I ruined my knee, that I shouldn't have put so much strain on myself, that all this happened because of dancing, which I really love, which I don't want to give up, but I'll have to give up and I'll never be able to do what I did before. Spoiler, I can. And when I met my mom after the shower, she told me that she was glad that I was so cheerful and I didn't have any pain. And I'm like, Mom, if only you knew how much I'm suffering. But instead, I just agreed with her because I didn't want to tell her the truth. I didn't want to upset her. I didn't want to hear that it's all your dancing fault, or you should have done less walk, or you ruined your own knee, or something like that. And I was really afraid to hear it, so I didn't say my real opinion, my real emotions and thoughts and worries about the perspective of my knee. And at the end of April, I was ready to make an appointment with a doctor, and my walk teacher helped me with this. Since he had been treating his knee for a long time, he had a meniscus tear, he had surgery, and he not only supported me morally, but also he gave me the contact of his doctor, and I was already more confident when I signed up for her. He also told me where to get an MRI scan, and at the end of April I made an appointment with a rheumatologist. On what day do you think? That's right, at the end of May. Very long for me. I wanted to do it as fast as possible. I spent May in an atmosphere of general elation and hope that I would finally find out what happened to my knee and how serious it was. In the same month, I discovered high native streams, and at first I was streaming for several hours every day. It was just the most interesting thing in my entire single life. And since I was often asked about Russian words, I decided to realize my long-held dream, and I began making videos on YouTube. And now, what happened to my knee? I went for an MRI scan in advance, and the I went for an MRI scan in advance, and the conclusion wasn't comforting. I cried like a bitch, when I read about initial manifestation of osteoarthritis of the knee joint. In short, the rheumatologist said it was okay and prescribed painkillers, chondroitin injections, and less strain on my knee. Less strain, I wanted to say strain. And do some blood test and come back in a month. So this is an MRI scan with my knee. It was very surprise for me when I heard that you have a very well knee. That's okay. It looks good, and I was so. If it looks good, why does it hurt so much? If it's okay. She didn't say me why. Of course, all this was expensive, but for the sake of the knee, I was ready for anything. Какой энемин, нахуй? Я хуею. Of course, all this was expensive, but for the sake of the knee, I was ready for anything, and in general it helped me, but again, I did more than I was prescribed. My knee didn't stop crunching, but at least the pain went away, and it was already a huge victory for me. But there was one thing. The pain in my left knee started, but then it passed too, and now everything is fine, but it really hit my nerves then. I was very worried that the process of destruction was continuing, and I couldn't stop it anyway. Блять, сука, да что с твоим ёбаным языком? I was very worried that the process of destruction was continuing, but I couldn't stop it in any way, and soon both my knees would be out of working order. Yes, that's exactly what I was afraid of, and thinking about it every day and every minute. In June, I completed my studies and received my diploma. It was just wow. In general, this year and this month, I felt more confident in my knowledges, in what I do. It was summer, and then I worked in a toy store, and in the summer there are usually a lot more buyers. So much more that you only sit down a few times a day, and it's still very hot because our boutique isn't ventilated, and the air conditioners don't work. The temperature was always 30 plus degrees. Yes, 20, 30, 40. 30 degrees. The record was 36, but I held on. I also went to training 2 times a week, stood at work a lot, and that's where a new blow was waiting for me. Trouble came from nowhere, as they say. One day I felt that my veins hurt under my knees constantly. And it was a terrible feeling when you can't do anything without this terrible feeling. As if you have something strangled under your knees and it's hard to straighten your leg, and only in the sitting position those tubes are not felt. The veins felt like tubes. I was very scared then. For me, it was the collapse of everything. How can you have varicose veins at the age of 23? It's fucked up. My dad has varicose veins. He already had surgery, but he was over 40 years old. And I'm 20 years ahead of him in diseases. All this was superimposed on the fact that I had vascular asterisks on my legs. And it seems to me, after the LPG massage that I did in June, maybe he was too strong and my blood vessels were too weak and fragile. fragile. And in general, one day they burst, and I was very upset that the vessels were like those of women who gave birth. My mother told me that she had asterisks after giving birth, and this is natural since there was a huge lot on the liver, but I have a minimal load on the liver. I don't drink alcohol, I don't eat junk food, I take choleretic and other vitamins, and still those fucking asterisks. In general, I was morally destroyed that in my 20s I had the condition of legs for all 40. And there was a day when I told my mom about my experiences. It was in the middle of July, and she supported me. Then she called my dad, and they comforted me together. And mom suggested that I had a very heavy load on my legs and I needed to let them rest. I agreed and stopped dancing, and after a few days my veins went away, but occasionally the pain returned, of course, if I walked or stood a lot. But now that's okay. But now, since I started work in museum, and since it started a lot of excursions a day, like 3 or 5 excursions per day, and when I'm constantly standing, yes, sometimes this pain came up, but in general that's okay, don't worry about me. There was nothing particularly interesting in August, and at the end of September my parents and I went to Sochi. It was a great trip, and you can view photos, videos and my notes about it, and also my other travels at the link in the description. But there was a catch, because before every trip with my parents I promised myself that I won't fight with them, that I won't create conflict situations, and every time I fail. Well, I can't help but argue with them, because we spent a lot of time together on vacations, much more than in ordinary life. And there my dad and I just especially because we are both explosive and can't stand each other for long. But we really love each other, but we're very angry and explosive people. And before the trip I finally found the love of my life. Yes, I went on a date and we started dating. It was so beautiful. I've been in a relationship for 7 months now, yes. And I'm happy that it happened. Hi to Igor. But before it happened, I went on another date, and it was terrible. It was a complete cringe, and I'll talk about it in another video. Also, in September, I noticed terrible dismorale from my dad. He said that what I was doing wouldn't be popular, and that I was making too few videos. He told me before that I chose an unpopular topic only about another channel, and my motivation to do something disappeared, and I abandoned it, although subscribers are still growing, and there seem to be 1,000. Although I haven't posted anything for 5 years, really. The last video was in 2020. It also happened with this channel, because after his words I don't want to do anything. And you might have noticed that the videos started to come out less often. This is partly because I had to hear my dad say that. And that day I also remember that I hid all my videos, decided not to post anything else, and left the house at night when everything was asleep. Then I came back, changed my mind and opened the entire video channel and decided to do it to spite Dad. He says that no one needs it, but I will do it anyway and prove to him that someone needs it. How did it happen with that channel? Where they still write nice things to me and ask me to continue filming. I'm sure it will also be on this channel. No matter how worthless I am, I'm still worth something. Also in September, for the first time in many years, I went for a massage because I was faced with such a problem as a pain under my left shoulder blade when straightening my back like this, and the pain was there. It turned out that this pain was psychological. Then I began to notice that after I got very nervous, my shoulder blade started to hurt again and no amount of exercise helped. And when I calmed down, it passed naturally. In October, I experienced my third birthday. It was October 11th. Then my parents told me that they were completely disappointed in me, that all the decisions I've made in my life have been wrong, that everything I do is bad, that every choice I make is wrong, and that I'm an unhappy person. For me, hearing this was the biggest fear in my life. I've been afraid of this since I went to kindergarten, I guess. I always knew that if I disappointed my parents, they would abandon me. And if I'm left alone, I just won't survive because I'm a child. Yes, even if my family throws me out of the house now, I probably won't survive. And after that revelation, I felt the greatest fear, the greatest stress, and the next day I was incredibly relieved because my parents' attitude towards me hadn't changed in any way. We continued to live as before, and then I realized that a global reset had occurred, that everything doesn't matter anymore, and I can do anything. After all, I'm a disappointment to them, which means that no matter what I do, what I do
love for good at least once in a while, so I wanna make sure somewhere in the chicken scratch I scribble and doodle enough.
Блять, что за рэп ёбаный? After all, I'm disappointment to them, which means that no matter what I do, so why not just do what I've always wanted to do, but didn't dare for fear of losing the love of my parents? In November, I enrolled in a pelvic floor course, but due to my busy schedule, I did workouts only on one day, not 5 times a week. I did 2 free workouts that day, but it didn't help me catch up with the current workouts, and I gave up on going through it. Well, in December, I wasn't for a complete emotional meltdown because I was making a lot of commitments that I didn't have time to do. First of all, video and script writing, editing, the most difficult, painting a picture for mom, knitting a scarf for a boyfriend, training, shooting a video on another channel, design my website, drafting a public offer, the moral burden of having to meet parents on New Year. I was afraid that my parents wouldn't like my boyfriend, and for good reason. and my boyfriend demanded from me that I arrange a meeting of my parents with him, provided that my mother categorically didn't want to recognize him or that he was at our house. She told me about it. Take blood tests, finish reading the book, take a Happy New Year greeting and post it on December 31. I've been on edge all December. And I didn't manage to do anything of what I had planned. And the meeting didn't go well either. More precisely, it was just a good acting. But in fact, everyone was against him, and I was additionally flattered by the fact that I felt a trick. That on the surface, everyone was smiling, everyone was kind, saying good words, but inside everything was just shaking with tension, because I felt that inside they didn't accept him. And I wasn't mistaken. A few days later, I found out a very unpleasant truth about my family's real attitude towards my boyfriend, and it affected me a lot. I had a very severe malfunction in the digestive tract. Also, because of this, my boyfriend and I had a fight, and that day I wrote to Telegram that I felt like a very bad person. And a little later we had another big fight, and the next day my dad took it out on me, and then I wrote that I had lost my whole family. And recently I was very worried about my boyfriend's dog. She had an operation and I was present when she was sedated and had an ultrasound. It was just terrible. My heart was breaking from how she was suffering and how my boyfriend was going through. I felt sorry for both of them. Now everything is fine with the dog. She is active as before, but those 2 days are between ultrasound and test with surgery. She had endometritis. Who doesn't know, this is when the uterus is filled with pus and blood flows out of the genitals. It's a terrible sight. The dog stopped eating, drank a lot, moved little, and constantly licked the pus with blood. It's just awful. Also, recently, due to very severe stress, my immune system sagged, and the place where the wart used to be began to hurt. To say that I was upset is an understatement. I still remember how painful it was, both at the time of the injection and at the time of the operation. The pain was such that I couldn't hold back my moan. Even though I clenched my fists and tried my best not to make a sound. And since I really didn't want the operation, although I understood that if the wart reappeared, then nothing would help, based on the fact that I would have to go the operation anyway, I decided not to be nervous right now and rest and sleep as much as possible. I was able to somehow miraculously detach myself from my worries and rest very well for 2 days. And what do you think? This place stopped hurting. I'm just in awe how it happened. And since then, I've made the final decision to be less nervous, because it's impossible to live like this anymore. Those nerves began to hurt my health very noticeably. That is, if I didn't notice that effects of stress so much before, now I'm just crumbling from how many negative things are happening in my life. Anyway, that's how my year went. Despite all the difficulties, I wouldn't say that it was bad. For me, it was very progressive in terms of my own development. I really learned a lot about life, about health, about relationships, and I think I'm ready to enter this year with new intentions. The first is to be less nervous, because my health can no longer take out the amount of stress that I allow myself. The second is to sleep more. My sleep broke down around the 5th grade, when I was 11 years old. That is, I have been going to bed at 20, and later for more than 11 years. It's just a nightmare. When I graduated from university, I was sure that now I have a lot of free time, I will be able to sleep well. I was so wrong. During these 1.5 years, I have not adjusted my sleep. Can you imagine? Shame on me, just shame. I want to sleep more this year, at least 8 hours, at least at 11 p.m. The third is to change jobs. The fourth is to buy a new phone. The fifth thing I dream about, but it doesn't depend on me. I want to get married. I want to get an offer from my boyfriend and that we sign. That would be great. I don't even want a wedding, just a registration. That will be enough. Because a wedding is a next year's goal for 2026. And now update. May 12. I changed jobs and my parents gave me a new phone. And I didn't just change jobs, I moved. And now dancing, yoga, stretching, regular blogging and earning income from self-employment will be added to those goals. How was your 2024 and what would you like to do in 2025? It will be very interesting to read in comments. Everyone, welcome to my space of comfort. And check my Telegram and Instagram because there I post more often and there I write my everyday life, something interesting, something funny because I very like to laugh and to joy. So welcome, I'm waiting for you there.